Well, good morning, everybody. This is Steve Wright. I'm the statewide director of the ICT sector team, which is part of the Workforce and Economic Development Department of the California Community College System. And these webinars are brought to you by our entire sector team and produced by Nicole Sherman. The regional directors, there they are. The ideas and a lot of the contacts come from them. They work throughout the state. You may know some of them very well. All of our guest speakers volunteer their time for the sake of our students' success. And now our ICT sector webinar library has over 52 webinars that are relevant and helpful to many faculty and individuals throughout our system. Many people like the fact they're edited and the videos are edited and time-stamped with transcript and everything else for later use. Coming up soon, next week, I believe we have cloud curriculum pathways for LA and Orange regions. And then after that, James Stanger from CompTIA is going to talk to us about their new and upgraded CompTIA learning resources for student and faculty. Today, we've got a friend at Robert Half. Paul Flaherty is going to speak to us. I think last time we spoke, it was just as the pandemic was starting and he was in his garage next to a washing machine. And well, he hadn't grown the beard at that time, I don't think. But anyhow, if you wanted to have a friend with insider knowledge of what's happening in the hiring and everything that's going on with remote and non-remote and jobs and in tech and in creative, well, you'd want to know Paul. So we're going to bring Paul to you and get going right now. And let's switch over. Welcome, Paul. How have you been?
I've been good, Steve. Thank you very much for having me again. I appreciate it. And thank you, Nicole. Well, again, I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to be here and to present to all of you. A lot has changed, yet a lot, I guess, in some ways has stayed the same since last we spoke. I am pleased to now be reporting live from inside the house as opposed to from the garage. So what we're going to be talking about today is hiring and compensation trends for creative and tech jobs here in 2021. By all means, at any point during my presentation or as we're walking through the slide deck, feel free to jump in, ask for clarification on something that I discuss, ask a related or non-related question. I'd love for this to be as interactive as possible, and hopefully you see value in the content that we're presenting today. But I think that that people will be excited to hear what we have to present, because it's been a very energetic and robust start to the year for us as it relates to the volume of opportunity that we're working on and what we're seeing in the job market. So I'm excited to share that with everyone. Okay, so that's a picture of pre-pandemic me. No beard, shorter hair, very corporate, and so. But my company seems to be okay with it. For now, we'll see if that continues. But we'll be talking about kind of corporate and business flexibility. But thankfully, they've been flexible in that regard. Just a quick overview for what I do for Robert Half. I am a district president over their technology and creative services practices for the Los Angeles metro market, Orange County, San Diego, New Mexico, Nevada, Utah, and Arizona. That's my geography, which is a little bit of a change from the last time I spoke to you folks, where I was managing Los Angeles and the Bay Area. So now it's the Southwestern United States, which is a new change and something that's been really exciting. Lot of change, both with our clients and with Robert Half. So not surprising in that regard. This first slide here talks about the hiring environment, what we've experienced year to date in January. When I first saw this slide, I was actually surprised. It certainly doesn't feel like we have a 6.3% unemployment rate in technology and creative. It's good to see the unemployment rate for college grads be even lower than the national unemployment rate, but I can virtually guarantee you that that 6.3% unemployment rate, if you took that statistic again, you looked at it exclusively from a tech and creative perspective, it would be much lower. You see the unemployment rate over the past 12 months and the steady decline since when the pandemic initially started. And I will tell you that in the month of January and February, it has felt no different than how it felt in the busiest months that we had pre-pandemic. And that has been a building trend over, I would say, the past 5 to 6 months in terms of clients with pent-up demand who were forced to put their projects on hold, who have now started to hire again and do so aggressively. So we are back. We find ourselves back in a war for talent where our clients are losing candidates to other opportunities. And one common theme that we'll talk about through this presentation is that we find ourselves in a place where we spend so much time on educating our client on the need to have speed with regards to their hiring process, because we have a lot of customers that feel like we're still in that kind of sky is falling type environment where unemployment rates are incredibly high and people are dropping out of the workforce, and that's just not our reality today anymore. Though the unemployment rate's higher than it was pre-pandemic, every single month it feels more and more and more like it did when we were at the busiest that I had ever seen us in 2019 and early 2020. If you see employee relocation trends, 38% of companies say they are allowing people to workers to relocate permanently. We're no different in that regard. We let people move wherever they wanted to move, and they're staying there indefinitely. I'm fortunate to work for a company that has offices in almost every major metro market and even some suburban markets. But I think that the thought of having no tolerance whatsoever to worker relocation is really something that would make an employer quite uncompetitive at this moment. And Stephen, Nicole, and I were talking about this, job postings out there. I'm sure people are seeing job postings that say, this job starts remote, but at some point we would like to have people come back on site. And, and so we're looking for, candidates that live within, some mileage range of where the job will ultimately be performed on site. One very interesting point I'd make about that is we see job postings start out with that requirement and then change midway through the life cycle of the search based on the client's understanding that, there may not be a substantial difference between having someone work 2 to 3 days a week on site versus no days a week on site, assuming the person's open and flexible to jumping on a plane every once in a while. And so, certainly not surprised to see that employee relocation trend number. And I think that's a number that's just going to continue to grow. So COVID-19 disruption brings challenges and opportunities for job seekers. So, thinking about the requirement of an organization and candidates for that matter to be resilient. We just talked about that shift in mindset in terms of where does our talent need to live and need to sit. That fierce competition that I mentioned, that again is very much our reality. And we are finding that candidates, once again, that we are getting to offer stage with our customers, are receiving offers from various different organizations, but a new dynamic, and this is something that I've already alluded to, but at times, or in the past, the primary concern was, when you were trying to hire someone that was highly sought after from a skill set perspective, the concern was who else, what other competitors in your local market are also vying for that person's skills that are trying to, to recruit the same sort of talent. now you're not just competing with other organizations in your local market, you're competing with organizations all over the country. And I told Nicole and Steve as we were talking before the meeting started that, I've never been more thankful to work for a company that has a national presence and a database of candidates that we can source nationally, because there are situations and opportunities every single day where if you sit in the Los Angeles market, you're being considered for opportunities that are in completely different geographies, sometimes a few time zones away. And so I think that that's a really important comment that I would make for college grads, either impending or recent college grads, is that you've got to make sure that you're expanding those search parameters in terms of any job board that you might be looking at for work, because there are companies that even when people start going back to the office, are going to allow their employees to work fully remote. And I think it's especially in jobs like technology oriented skill sets and creative skill sets, that's particularly relevant. And then Steve and Nicole, if there are questions that pop up in the chat that I'm not seeing, could you guys just call them out for me, just because I'm not monitoring that as I go. Have there been any questions that came up so far, or anyone that has a question that they would like to ask at this point?
There are a couple of questions, actually. So Courtney Brown is saying relocation has usually offered some compensation for home resources. Does relocation offer financial support for necessary broadband upgrades to meet telecommuting needs?
So it's an interesting question. And so I'll talk about the relocation component first and foremost, and then I'll talk about stipends, if you will, or employee resources allocated towards improving the quality of people's remote offices. So the relocation, and I'll just speak from the perspective of my teams in California. So, I think everyone's read articles about people, fleeing high cost of living markets in California in droves for, lower cost of living markets. At least whether that's temporary or permanently, whether it's due to tax structure, whether it's due to being closer to family. But, there were no shortages of articles like that. I think that many of them were blown out of proportion, but there were a number of employees that worked for me in Southern California that ended up moving to, various different places. Seemingly the majority of them moved to Texas for a variety of tax and cost of living related reasons. But, if they moved, and they did so on their own volition, then certainly there was no, relocation related assistance that we provided, because we didn't ask them to move. They chose to move on their own. We were supportive of their move. We didn't make them change the nature of their job. They continued to be able to support clients and recruit candidates and build relationships with candidates in Southern California, regardless of where they lived. But our company has offered 2 rounds of stipends specifically for the purpose of improving the quality of Wi-Fi within people's home networks, in addition to allowing everyone to bring home most of their devices and peripherals. But I was pleased that we did offer kind of 2 rounds. I think had less. That was all employees, whether they relocated or not. But I don't think that we're unique in offering that benefit to our staff, just because it didn't take long for people to get frustrated with laggy internet when that was the only way that you could connect with people early on in the pandemic. I know my blood certainly boiled when I would be presenting in a meeting and it would drop off. So hopefully that answers the question. But I think that's very common. I've heard that the vast majority of our clients have done the same thing, offered either loaner resources, routers, modems, or just money as a kind of a one-time stipend associated with your payroll to help you to invest in upgrades to your home Wi-Fi.
I'd just like to ask a clarification. You mentioned relocation, but is that the same thing as saying you can still work remotely? What's the difference between relocation and remote?
So we're all 100% remote. Well, I shouldn't say that. The vast majority of my geography is 100% remote. There's a handful of offices that I have where people are eligible to go back into the office, which is just, based on state law of whether the offices are in fact accessible. My Utah team, actually, they never left the office. The Utah team's been there the whole time. Vegas can go back in. Phoenix can go back in. So, so those teams they have the ability to go into the office, but no one is required to. So there is a 100% remote flexibility allowance on behalf of the company. And in terms of not being required to go into an office. And then, we don't care what geography a person sits in either, by and large. I would say that the sort of the disclaimer I would put out there in that regard is if you're in a leadership role for the company, or if you aspire to move into a leadership role where you'll be supervising staff, there's less flexibility for remote leaders than there are people that are, in staff level opportunities everyone's remote again, but to move to a completely different market, because I think the thought process is if you're leading people and some of those people are back in the office, then it's going to be the expectation that you have the ability to get into that office.
And that observation is not just your company. You're seeing that across the board.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah. We haven't quite gotten to a place where we're comfortable with fully remote leadership 100% of the time. And maybe that's where we go, once things open up again. And the reason why we would do that, if we were to go that route, it would be 100% based on, competitive equity, I would say, or, just wanting to present, the same benefits and opportunities, as other, companies in our space. But I think, we feel like it's going to be important for our leaders to have, some face-to-face interactions with our staff once that's healthy. But as it relates to going and visiting customers face-to-face, like we're not, I personally very much miss the opportunity to interact with my customers face-to-face, but I know not all of my customers feel the same way. There's a lot of clients that I don't think that they're ever going to want to meet with us face-to-face ever again. And that's just fine. I mean, we've been conducting all of our client interactions through Zoom or Teams for a year anyway. So, I think that, there's no reason why that can't continue and we can't do good business together. But I personally just miss the face-to-face interaction, but that's just me.
Could I ask a question kind of
Yes,
regarding this topic? So my name is Josh Kangas. I'm actually a high school engineering academy director. And I've been kind of like joining some of these conversations this year and, having my kids, become privy to them. One of the kind of apprehensions of I know high school students right now is it seems like the world is kind of shifting to this online Zoom-based platform. There's a lot of opportunities here. The professionals that we're bringing into our classrooms are talking about all of the positives of this side of things and how, given the opportunity, most of them are actually taking this road. It's a very scary world for our high school kids, though, because a lot of them aren't having positive experiences doing school through Zoom. And so the idea that they might be entering into college and the workforce after the fact and kind of being constrained to this, I'm not looking for like direct answers or anything like that, but just kind of something I want to throw out there. If anyone has, any experiences or accolades they could offer to kind of help someone like me in having conversations with high school kids, letting them know that all of these adults that are making these decisions have had the opportunity at least to go to that brick and mortar. And these kids have had the expectation that once they get out of school, they will too. And now it sounds like a lot of them might not. And so there is some stress and anxiety. I don't know if that's making sense, but just kind of something I wanted to kind of throw out there. And if anyone had any thoughts surrounding that.
Sure. Well, I'll open it up to anyone else before I give my thoughts on it. If there's anyone else that has feedback, just because I don't directly interact with the high school population a huge amount.
This is Pat McClanahan. I'm a computer science professor at Delta College in Stockton. And yeah, I've gotten similar types of conversations with some of my students. Some of them have actually stopped taking classes till we come back on campus just because they don't do the remote thing well at all. And so, but to your question about the high school, you know, I don't know what the market will bring as we go down the road. We've had some really good luck in the whole realm of cybersecurity, and I think if you talk to anybody that's in teaching any of that or interacting with industry, I've heard numerous industry individuals, people actually doing the hiring, saying that, you know, you do not need a bachelor's degree to do cybersecurity right now. You don't need an AA degree or an AS degree in cybersecurity. There are so many jobs open. So I kind of always throw that out to my students that, hey, you know, here's a place for you. You can go get some training and step into some really decent jobs right now. And yeah, you know, the tech world is going to continue to be the tech world, I think. You know, that's my opinion, and my opinion, and $2.49 will get you a large coffee over at your favorite coffee shop.
You know, I would add to that, just, you know, having you know, young kids that are involved, you know, getting involved with Zoom learning, or were involved with Zoom learning for the first time this year. I think, and certainly this, you know, I don't mean to overly generalize, but I think some of the Zoom burnout comes from being part of a large group of people that are listening to a lecture where there might not be a huge amount of engagement between the students listening to the content and the person presenting the content. I know, as it relates to the way I train my teams now, I at all costs try to avoid scenarios where I'm kind of the only person talking and presenting on subject matter, because it's so easy to multitask when you're taking a remote class. There's all this stimulus, right? There's like all these little alerts that are popping up, whether it's on your phone, whether it's on your screen. There's so many distractors. And so depending on the sizes of the teams that these high school students or recent college grads are stepping into, I think that the smaller group, or ideally one-to-one connection between the employee and the manager, is a very different experience than what they have grown accustomed to in the educational settings, where it's just, you know, I just find that like the quiet voices and the people that historically are more comfortable not engaging, and, you know, or just don't engage in that way, you know, I have to seek them out I have to try to avoid that format for them in general. And then I have to, you know, really make sure that I find time to connect with them one-to-one. And, you know, that's probably a challenging thing. I would imagine that's a very challenging thing for educators to, you know, to pull off at this point. So I would share that with high school students and college grads, is, you know, even if you have Zoom fatigue or, you know, or video learning fatigue, that hopefully there's this relationship building opportunity between yourself and your team, between yourself and your manager. Like, I have blocked time every week for just one-to-one connection with people to talk about nothing but how they're doing. Like that's it. Because I understand that if they don't get that in the office engagement and interaction with their staff and with their manager, it's really easy for people to, you know, get lost and, you know, and feel like, you know, the company doesn't care, and, you know, and no one's looking out for them. And it's, you know, and it can add to stress and anxiety that people are naturally feeling right now.
You know, Paul, we had a futurist on a few months back, Peter Coffey, who's with Salesforce. And we asked him to speak on how COVID was changing the future. And his reaction was, it's not. The future's here 5 years early. And the thing I'm taking from that, and I think I would share it with some of these educators here whose students are reluctant, is you got to try to coach them through this, because I think this is the new normal. And if you're seeing that in the job world too, then that's something we all need to kind of face and become comfortable with.
No, I agree. And you know, and again, even when they start allowing us back into the office in places like Southern California, I mean, every indication has been that it's going to be a hybrid schedule. You know, two days, 3 days. I haven't heard anyone that's saying we're going back. It's going to be all 5. Even if that's their intention, I think that would be really scary for employees to hear that's going to be the company's take on how they're handling this. But that's a really good point. I mean, I know it's frustrating, but I do believe that it's here to stay. And so, you know, trying to look at the bright side and think about how it would be different, like what the more positive experience would be. You know, the interaction between, I've actually heard a lot of feedback from our employees that from a peer-to-peer perspective, their relationships have never been better than they were, like even comparative to when we were in the office, because people call each other on video. You know, we never call each other on our cell phones. Like, we're always calling one another on we use Microsoft Teams. And so I'm face to face with people so much more often. I mean, it's virtual face to face, but it's so much more often than we ever were when we were in the office. We had Teams then too. It just, you know, I don't have, you know, my voice over IP phone sitting on my desk. I mean, we're about to move to a new telephony system. Maybe that'll change things, but you know, but I love the fact that the default within my company now, when you need to talk to a person, is a Teams video call. That makes me feel very, very, very connected to them, and I've had some relationships that have really never been stronger, kind of based on that dynamic. So if you look at these top 3 hiring changes due to COVID, conducted remote interviews and onboarding, I don't think that would surprise anyone. Shorten the hiring process. You know, due to the fact that, you know, maybe it was challenging to line up all stakeholders' schedules in light of the fact that people are remote and in so many different places. I found that in some cases the hiring process has been shortened. In a lot of cases, I actually saw it lengthened. So I'm not sure I 100% agree with that based on my personal experience. Whenever the hiring process is extended, it typically is due to a client with the mindset that they have the lion's share of options and they can take their time and, you know, and evaluate as many candidates as they want because they watch the news and they see that the unemployment rates are so high. But again, I would tell you that that's not the reality in the technology space, certainly, and the creative space. You know, that space was hit harder in a relative sense than technology, although, you know, we're seeing creative come back, especially digital creative, which is a slide that I'll reference as I move through the deck here. Digital creative is just as competitive as anything that we're doing in the technology space. And advertise fully remote jobs, I think we already covered that. I see some, Nicole, it looks like there's some questions flashing up there. Maybe I'm wrong.
Just one popped up now. There were kind of comments before this one, but how do you address the important component of equity? Many telework tools are very reminiscent of surveillance technology used against minorities and online harassment of women. What assurances can there be made for equity in hiring?
So in terms of equity, and it's an interesting question because I'm actually participating on a panel discussion next month for International Women's Day, where we're talking about pay equity and the more severe impact that the COVID pandemic has had with women relative to men. Of course, it's you know, certainly I don't think that the company has ever had a higher, I mean, I'm talking about Robert Half, but I'm also speaking in general for most organizations. I don't think that we've ever had a period of greater awareness as it relates to unconscious bias and the need for diverse candidate pools for our hiring pipelines right now. Those changes have been steadily building for months within our organization. As it relates to the video technology, if you're asking in terms of candidate interviews, like how do we protect against the potential for discrimination with video in candidate interviews, I would say that most of our candidates that interviewed for jobs had some level of face-to-face interaction with the client, before the pandemic. So, a lot of them were face-to-face with customers before. Now they're on video, and so that's the substitute there. But I think there's a lot of similarities between those two. That the clients still want the opportunity to meet talent face to face. But I would also say that I feel that our clients and Robert Half personally has never been more thoughtful about ensuring that before we make decisions on any hire, that we have seen a diverse enough population of candidates such that we can say that we are hiring from the most qualified pool of available candidates, as opposed to hiring exclusively people that maybe have the same background as the folks that currently work for Robert Half or look like people that currently work for Robert Half. But we've worked really hard at that to try to chip away at kind of preconceived notions and or unconscious biases, and that's been a welcome change for us. And so I don't know if I perfectly addressed the question, but those are my thoughts there.
I think there's probably more issues will come up over time as we realize what seems more or less fair about a video engagement for men or women or different people. Obviously, some people don't have the bandwidth literally, and they have some disadvantage, or they're in some area where they need help that way for the interview process, perhaps. Mm-hmm. I'm sure these are all valid issues. I'm not sure what the answers are, but
we are constantly trying to strike that delicate balance between ensuring that we have enough video access such that we don't lose that sense of camaraderie and rapport that we had when we were all side by side together in the office, yet at the same time allowing people like their own space, such that, I mean, there's plenty of days where, I just got my hands full with the kids and, I just can't find that time for, I mean, this is going to sound off. I mean, I just can't, I think everyone knows it's like hard to find time for a shower that day. Right. Just can't get the hair in order. It is what it is. I think that, we're all experiencing that. And so, there's been absolutely, from my perspective, it's like if someone doesn't want to turn their video on or, it's not the end of the world. We just encourage them to do so when they do feel comfortable, so that, we have the ability to try to maintain the connectedness that, looking at each other creates. And so, but it has been a challenge, no question. I've got a lot of slides left, and there's just so many good conversations here that I feel like I'll have a hard time getting through this deck, but I really want to answer all these questions that people have. Maybe I'll try to just power through a couple here, just so at some point we get to the compensation data, which I know people are interested in. But in terms of top 5 changes prompted by working during COVID, more frequent communication from leadership. I mean, every single month, our executives address the company in town hall style format in these live events. I mean, the need for constant updates in terms of the health of the company, in terms of our strategy, in terms of how we are keeping a competitive advantage, in terms of the health and safety of people's jobs, health and safety in general, the future of work. because when we do surveys, we get more questions about the future of work and are you going to force us to come back into the office when we reach, whether it's herd immunity or a point where, a certain amount of people are vaccinated, and that's a major concern for a lot of our employees. The more frequent communication we get from our leadership, the calmer our teams feel. And so that's definitely something that we've experienced. Like I said, that the collaboration, I don't think it's ever been better, even though we're all working remotely. And, my whole life is, we're on Zoom now, but literally I live in Teams. If I'm not, if I'm not in front of my computer, I'm IMing people. I don't even really text anymore. It's all just like the chat feature through Teams. And, and we can move seamlessly from the desktop to the cell phone. I know this probably sounds like a team sales pitch, but it's worked pretty well for us. More innovation. If there's one team that's never been busier at Robert Half, and if you're thinking about like what are the growth areas within very technical forward-facing organizations right now? I mean, for our team, it's for our organization, I would say it's business transformation. The business transformation group within Robert Half, which is the team that works on things like collaboration tools and technological advancements and integrating new applications and creating greater efficiency. And how can we do more with less? I mean, that's all what our BT team focuses on. And I don't know that there is a more exciting place within our organization to work right now. So, and they haven't slowed down a bit. I mean, there was so much coming at people in the beginning of the pandemic that, there were some folks that said, can we please slow the pace of all of the innovation that we're doing right now? There's too many upgrades coming at people too quickly right now. We're just trying to get people to adapt to a fully remote work life. And now you're throwing all of these new apps and tools at us. And basically the answer from the higher levels is no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to slow down the pace of innovation because it's what helps to keep us connected to one another and keep our competitive advantage. And so, anything and, any opportunities in business transformation, with companies, digital transformation, business transformation, to me are great career opportunities to look into. Greater transparency into business priorities. What is the company's featured fight today? How does that change quarter by quarter? Has been really important to our staff. And then just a clearer sense of purpose is just, I don't think that there's ever, part of the reason why I love my profession is, I work in a sales organization, but at the end of the day, if I'm making sales, I'm helping people to put food on the table, to pay their mortgage, to, put their kids through school. That feels really good for me. That sense of purpose tied to what we do and the need to remind people that we're doing good work that is impacting people's lives in a positive way has never been more important than right now, because people want to impact change positively. And so we've been reminding our staff of that with great regularity. Many employers worry about keeping top talent. More than 8 in 10 managers are very concerned about retaining valued employees. So, I get that, especially with my people that have relocated to different markets. If it ever becomes strained for them working on different time zones, like I have people that are I have someone that's supporting Silicon Valley living in Boca Raton. Like it's incredible where people are performing their jobs these days in relation to where their clients sit. One of the things that I always think about is, as the dust settles and things start to return to quote unquote normal, whatever that looks like, I have very real concerns about retaining our staff, in light of the fact that there's going to be options and opportunities for them in that local market where they sit. My only hope is that, if they do decide that they want to try something new, that they do that with Robert Half and we're able to do them. But we spend an incredible amount of time thinking about employee morale right now. Never spent more time thinking about morale and burnout, because the other component to virtual work is theoretically it never turns off. And we've had major problems with people working more hours than they ever did when they were working on site. I mean, think about it from the perspective of Los Angeles. Like there were days where I was losing an hour and a half in commute each way to work. And I know all the LA people and a lot of the Southern California people, know where I'm coming from with that. I mean, that's been a welcome change, not having to sit on the 405. But in that time that I'm not sitting on the highway, I'm working. And so I'm just working way longer hours. I work longer hours. I work at night. I mean, it's just hard. It's just hard to turn it off. And that's a major concern for employers because, sometimes it's coupled into the idea. I mean, there still is a lot of fear associated with, this changing environment. Even though I'm giving you a lot of positive information and data, we've got employees that still fear for the stability of their role. And so, they have a hard time, voluntarily taking time off, and they have a hard time stopping work even outside of typical work hours. So that burnout factor is very real, and we are constantly brainstorming on different ways that we can help people manage that. I've tried myriad strategies to get people into a better headspace, and I was telling Steve and Nicole, I mean, we've gone way out there in terms of things that we would traditionally try. I actually have a weekly mindfulness meditation that I'm doing with my teams to try to just get people to remember to breathe. Like initially I just had, I've got an Apple Watch, and just, anyone that has an Apple Watch, how it like tells you to breathe all the time. I always feel like it's just, because it's monitoring my beats per minute, it's like, okay, maybe they can tell that like my heart rate's raising a little bit, but even sometimes when I'm very calm, it tells me to breathe. But I had blocked time in my calendar early in the pandemic just to breathe. And then I realized that it wasn't enough because I would just multitask through that. And I would, breathe while sending emails, like breathe deeply while sending emails. But now, like, I mean, we're actually getting people to, to block out 10, 15 minutes of their week and just breathe with us. To try to keep people's stress levels lower, surprisingly well received.
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
And it's, my apologies, it's probably something that's also very kind of broad scale and probably too early to tell, but I saw a question in the chat kind of talking about how, this kind of online platform is really creating, equity, especially for places of, rural areas, so people can have access to these type of job opportunities rather than live in cities. Has there been any type of like inclinations or conversations about almost like a kind of like a universal type salary structure potentially moving forward in the future? I'm thinking just in fact of like, where I am in the Bay Area, like a base salary for someone going to computer science is around 125,000 a year, but like back home where I'm from in Maine, it's about 100. And so, what an amazing opportunity for somebody in Maine to potentially, make an extra $30,000 a year, earning a California salary while living in a place that has a cost of living lower, like some place like Maine. Is that, I mean, it seems like a cool way for employees to kind of hack, a salary system, which is great. But like, is that at all a conversation yet? Are people talking about that, or just take advantage of it if you can, type of thing?
It's a great question, and I would tell you that the conversations are starting. But I mean, I don't think anyone feels like they have the answer to that question yet. We had initially, some of the initial discussions that I heard from clients were, we weren't even going to touch that until like a year down the road, after all of this started, where we start to think about market-driven pay equity. Because I mean, I hired all these people, like a lot of my staff, to work for me in some of the highest cost of living markets in the country. And none of them took pay cuts when they moved to lower cost of living places.
Yeah, I think that was kind of more specific for my question. Are companies starting to consider salaries based off of where you're plugging in from? So for instance, if you are living in Maine, working for us, would your salary be more adjustable to your cost of living versus someplace like the Bay Area?
Yeah, and no, I definitely understand. I understood that as your question. And I would say that conversation is happening everywhere right now. I haven't heard about a company that is, laying out a defined timeline for it yet. But I mean, it's a logical conversation to have when it's not a temporary relocation. And I think it really does, it's contingent on the, the nature of the compensation plan for the organization. But I mean, I think it like I could see that having, you know, a pretty substantially negative impact on people that live in the higher cost of living markets, right? If suddenly, you know, they're forced to, you know, take a pay cut because, you know, there are people in lower cost of living markets that can do those jobs. But I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, maybe that's where we're going. I don't know. And certainly I don't like, I don't have a crystal ball on it. I know that there's a lot of discussion about that. I mean, I think that, you know, Twitter was one of the first companies to start talking about that, because I think they came out and said we're remote forever pretty early on. And then it was like, okay, you're remote forever, but you hired all of your people, you know, or so many of your people to do work in this incredibly high cost of living market. You know, at some point, there has to at least be some consideration for restructuring. We're certainly we're not talking about that at Robert Half at all yet. I've heard about my clients talking about it, but nothing defined yet.
Well, we had this conversation a little bit before. Sometimes I almost feel like we shouldn't have our conversations before because we cover a lot of cool stuff. But the idea is that our students need to understand that people who are in areas where the cost of living is less may now be applying for jobs that are down the street from them. And so that's more competition for them locally. So they also have to think about, where else can I apply? So we talked about, I think it was, you used the word changing the filter on what you search on. And so you're looking nationwide now for jobs instead of just in California. And that actually goes back to the question we had, is how prepared for our students should be for this virtual work environment. It sounds to me like a key competitive advantage might be your ability to function anywhere. And those are skills we all need to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. Being a good communicator, a good collaborator, someone that speaks, you know, multiple languages, you know, and I don't even mean just like the actual like traditional definition of language, but just someone that can adapt well to the communication style of different cultures and different geographic areas. I think that's really critical. And, you know, someone that can effectively communicate and build rapport, you know, in that exclusively virtual setting. I mean, these are some of the skill sets that I think need to be cultivated, you know, within schools right now, you know, assuming that has potential to be the future of work. So we've got our Robert Half releases a creative and marketing salary guide and a technology salary guide that talk through compensation data trends and what we're anticipating for 2021. It's all compiled with raw data from the placements that we made in 2020. So you can see exactly what the impact was from a compensation perspective across various different functional roles within creative and marketing and technology. And then the anticipated growth percentage for those functional roles in 2021. We conduct extensive interviews with executives, both in the technology space and the creative and marketing space, to get their feedback on our data and talk through what trends they're anticipating, you know, what's driving business for them, what does business transformation look like for them, what are the initiatives that are taking priority for them within their organizations. And so there's a lot of really helpful data in the creative and marketing guide and in the technology guide. Anyone that's interested in downloading copies of these guides can do so on either the Creative Group or the Robert Half Technology website, which is www.creativegroup.com or www.rht.com for Robert Half Technology. And so, you know, one bullet that you'll see here is improving customer communications, expanding online services. I mean, certainly e-commerce from a creative perspective has been a steady build, you know, and that was a trend that was certainly well on its way before COVID, but now, I mean, the ability to effectively sell your goods and services online and to engage customers digitally and, you know, to retain customers, you know, and, you know, rebranding and making sure that your message is really clear to your customers has never been more important than it is right now. I'd already spoken about digital opportunities, But if you look here, you see 61% of marketing departments have pivoted resources to improving customer-facing digital interfaces. I mean, I don't know about you folks, but I get most of my groceries from Amazon Prime. We have a lot of clients that are developing or enhancing their mobile apps now because that's the way that they're maintaining a relationship with their core demographics. And I don't see that trend slowing down anytime soon. 56% are changing their business models to focus on digital opportunities. So money that maybe is being transitioned from traditional marketing, or certainly anything in the print space, all being transitioned over to digital. Steve, when I think about this trend, to me, it's like, the future is 5 years early. So we were on that path towards digital transformation. It just accelerated, that much faster because COVID forced it. This is a list of creative and marketing skills that are in demand. Marketing automation and demand gen software, CRM software certainly is very popular. Customization of CRM software, SEO and SEM based on the amount of time people spend on the internet searching for things that they're interested in or want to buy, and making sure that you have prime placement for whatever your good or service is that you're trying to represent online. We already talked about e-commerce, user experience and user interface design, to create the most engaging and retention driven applications, whether they be mobile or desktop. Front end web development, I think aligns very much with UX, UI, AI and machine learning. Our business transformation teams have spent a lot of time and energy improving the machine learning and AI components to our internal Salesforce database, such that we can find and get access to the most qualified national candidates for any job order that we're working on with our clients locally. We want the CRM to get smarter and smarter and smarter about where it looks for that talent, such that we don't find ourselves in a place where we aren't considering candidates from maybe a geo that didn't naturally come to mind when we were searching for a particular position. But we want the system to get smarter, such that wherever we go from here, we've got all of that we've got all of that experience kind of baked into the way our CRM thinks. Content strategy and copywriting, there's been a need to change how content is presented, and a lot of times that also encapsulates a larger branding strategy overhaul as well. Which industries are hiring creative talent? These are what we commonly refer to as the trending industries within our ecosystem, but healthcare, technology, application building, manufacturing, insurance, finance, and education. I mean, education, we had seen, and we continue to see explosive demand from an educational perspective as it relates to providing technical support for remote learning. And initially it was, we have an overflow of help desk tickets being logged for families that are having trouble with their Zoom or whatever it is that the students are learning on, whatever platform the students are learning on remotely. But schools would hire a particular number of people to help with that overflow. In almost every instance, it became a scenario where they didn't hire enough people because the tickets were increasing at a rate that was so much faster than what anyone anticipated, because there really is a lot that goes wrong with these platforms when you're using them all the time. And then it's, who knows how much longer it will continue to be that way. And so the technology trending industries are very similar to the creative trending industries. Here's another kind of overview for hot creative and marketing jobs, but I think we covered most of these. Communication specialists, just underscoring the importance of consistent communication. Steve and Nicole, I see we're running out of time here, and I feel terrible just because I do have a number of additional slides on the tech side here. I can just try to kind of speed through some of these if you'd like. I don't know how hard the stop is for people.
If people have to go, they have to go. If you could just take whatever it takes, maybe another 5 or 10 minutes, and give us the overview of what you have here, and we'll be posting the slides on the website as well. And but just hear your take on a few of them.
Okay, sure. This is just a snapshot for what our salary guide looks like. So you've got 2 functional titles down here: web content coordinator, copywriter, and it shows you what is the national average for a candidate with little to no experience in that space, average experience, above average experience, and exceptional experience within that space. All of the numbers that are presented are national averages, and then you apply your local multiplier to that number, and that's how you arrive at the average for a particular market. And so, the San Francisco Bay Area will have a higher multiplier than, Kansas City, for example. And so anyone that's interested in that they can go to our website, they can download copies of these salary guides. Then this is the technology salary guide that we have listed here. And, it talks about some of the key themes and trends that are driving growth within the technology industry. But I would give kind of a quick overview to that. Information security and the need to keep data secure in light of the fact that so many networks have expanded substantially, given how many of the employees are working remotely. That has certainly become a major focal point. Application development for similar end goals, whether it's business transformation or improved collaboration within the technology space, has been key. Digital transformation, absolutely a driver for tech. We talked about AI and machine learning, cloud computing, RPA, robotics process automation, and data science. The data-driven skill set space for technologists is incredibly robust right now. People that can evaluate data differently, whether your business is growing or it's not growing, the need for people to come in and access large data sets such that they're motivating or recommending that the business make thoughtful decisions in terms of where they should pivot and where they should invest. I have never seen a greater need for data-driven professionals right now. This slide gives an overview for the skill sets that we're seeing on job descriptions with the greatest regularity. And then, I would just talk about the soft skills again, because we talked about the need to be able to effectively interface and communicate and build relationships with a very diverse, very distributed population of employers across different markets with different cultures and different values. And so I don't know that soft skills have ever been more important. Quick overview for the certifications that our clients are asking for with the greatest regularity. Again, we'll share this deck so anyone has the ability to see these different certs that we're seeing requested the most frequently. And then these are our trending industries within the tech space: healthcare, financial services, tech, and government. Technology salary guide data, very similar to the way it's structured for creative. Here's a DevOps engineer and a CRM technical developer, 2 very hot skill sets for us, but still, again, national averages broken down by percentile there. And, we've got an overview for benefits and, what are the most valuable perks that employees are looking for when searching for their next job. So I think those are really my critical slides there. Some of the other ones I think cover content that we've already been through, but you can also find a salary calculator online, so you can look for compensation tied to a particular functional area. That also can be found from the Robert Half website.
Well, I want to thank you, Paul, and I don't regret the time we spent discussing the general notion of what life is like now that we're deep into the COVID thing, because I think a lot of us are suffering from kind of a shock or denial or awareness gap on what is really happening. And so I really welcome you coming here today and providing clarity. This job demand figures really speak to the fact that, hey, no matter how tough or weird or different it is, there's still demand. And for a lot of our students, there's incredible hope. There are skills that are very precisely defined that they can get and compete well in the marketplace, a weird marketplace, a different marketplace, a national marketplace. But still, to me, it's a very optimistic viewpoint.
Agreed. And thank you again for the opportunity to present. I'm sorry that, we had to rush there towards the end of the slides. Just, it's good conversation. So I wanted to make sure I responded to everyone, but I really appreciate the opportunity to join you again. And anyone that has any questions, you can feel free to link in with me on LinkedIn, and I'll do my best to answer them for you.
And we'll bring you back in about 6 months to see if you were right or not.
Hopefully, I don't know. We'll see if the beard's still here or if I've gone corporate again by that point. So we shall see.
All righty, good. Well, thank you all, and see y'all next week for Southern California Cloud Network curriculum. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.